Okay, Charan, I want you to imagine a surgeon.
Okay, done.
Okay, so describe your surgeon.
So he's about, I'd say...
Whoa, hold it there. You said he, as in a man.
Damn, I did.
Well, don't beat yourself up for gender stereotyping. Today's guest will do that for you. She's Simran Toor from SHE, which stands for SG Her Empowerment. SHE is an independent, non-profit organization that strives to empower girls and women through community engagements and partnerships.
And Simran is SHE's transformational CEO. Today, we're chatting with Simran about her lifelong mission to fight for gender equality and fair treatment. So let's do this.
Let's do it.
Hello and welcome to the TransformAsians podcast. Today we've got Simran Toor, CEO of SG Her Empowerment with us, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about what she's doing in the world of female
Empowerment.
Thank you, Simran.
Always speaking over men. That's how I got this job.
Brilliant. Anyway, allow me to just get this started then. Simran, you started your career as a lawyer, but about 12 months ago, you got a tap on the shoulder. Tell us about how your journey in your career journey has changed.
Okay, so that's a bit of a long story, so bear with me. So you're right to say I started off in law. So I'm one of those quite idealistic people, always wanting to help the underdog, do right by people. So I think that's why I got into law in the first place, to help, right? My first job was in the government. I decided to help by sending people to jail as a prosecutor. So that was not very fun.
Helpful.
Fun,
very
but not
helpful.
fun. So after about 5 years of that, I joined private practice. I was there in my firm for 15 years. And then, over time, I saw, okay, in addition to helping my own clients, my fellow compatriots in law, I started to see like a change in the gender representation. So the longer I stayed, the less and less females there were that were the same seniority as me. There's one very good example I can think of. We were in court. There was a huge case. I won't name names, but it involves a church. And there were about 30 lawyers. And how it works in court is you sit in order of your seniority. So first chair, second chair, third chair. Then I realized I was in the second chair row. I just looked behind me. It's all girls, maybe one boy. And then by the time I got to the second chair layer, so maybe about 10 years in, I was the only girl left. Oh. And then first chair, it was all men. So I just thought, it's such a perfect example of how women drop out of the profession over time. So of course, I had to go and investigate and find out why it's so unfair, right? So I think I was like overachiever. I did so by starting the women's chapter of the Law Society and mobilizing all 6,000 lawyers to come and answer some questions in a survey. And really what we found out was that as you get more and more senior, more and more close to partnership, fighting for equity in business, right? The demands on you get greater. And that tends to be around your 30s. And at the same time, a lot of women are starting a family. So the burdens on them, because they generally bear the home-related burdens, right? Got too much, and then invariably they would say, I think I have to focus on my family. Or I'll take, some other kind of law job that's less taxing than legal practice in a law firm. So that was really sad because I saw some very, very promising women who I thought, this person can be a judge, this person can be the next attorney general, leave the profession, some for good. So I thought, what a shame, this loss of talent. I wonder whether we can do anything about it. So it really was a passion of mine, but really done as a hobby outside of law. So you said 12 years ago, someone asked, okay, we're setting up this charity. Do you want to help us build it, right, and lead the direction of it? And it's, your favorite thing, gender equality. So I said, okay, I thought this is something I would do after I retire from law.
Right.
A hobby.
What are they trying to tell me?
Yeah, but then, yes, I retire now, right? Stop making trouble. Actually, it was a lawyer that asked me. Maybe she knew something I didn't know. But I just thought, no one, you don't get this kind of phone call twice in your life, this kind of offer to build a whole organization, build the conversation, and the direction that things will take. So I just said, okay, let's do it.
Could you just talk a little bit about the mandate that the organization has?
Yeah. So she actually looks at all issues pertaining to gender equity or equality in Singapore. But the approach we took, because there are many women's organizations already out there, was to see, okay, which is the area that's not being covered? And ironically, there isn't an advocacy group for mainstream women, the everyday woman, like your wife, your mother, your sister. There's a lot of special interest advocacy, so LGBT, victim support, foreign spouses resident in Singapore. But the same thing that every woman is struggling with, no one was addressing. So that's, again, balancing home and the workplace, dealing with whatever unconscious bias or glass ceilings in the workplace. Menopause at work is not easy for many women, but they go through it. So that's where we hope to position ourselves. We also we saw another black hole, which was data. We can talk a bit more about that later, I think. There really isn't a lot of equality-driven facts and figures out there that is focused on Singapore or local data. So you can't drive the conversation if you don't have the information, right? So that's something we want to build as well. And one of the other areas we thought, well, nobody's really thinking about this in the equality context is you can be equal, in real life, but there is this other realm that now exists, which is the online realm. How does equality between genders play out there?
Right.
So that's something we're trying to address in our organizations. It's a very relevant issue, I think, moving forward.
And I think it's when the organization's name, the use of the word empowerment, rather than say rights, I guess, or equity or equality. Why empowerment?
I mean, the word empowerment includes all of them, right? Equality, equity, rights, and it's also that teach a man to fish or a woman to fish, rather, ethos, which is really we want to look at all ways of bringing women up, or advancing their interests. It can be done by rights conversations or by, in sometimes, encouraging equality for equality's sake might work. And most of the time, however, it's about looking at the unique needs of women in a particular situation and seeing what they are. So that's fairness, that's equity. So we don't really want to focus on equality just for equality's sake.
Right. And that feeling of empowering women and girls, I think in everyday life, it sounds like it's quite important.
It is. So we have a very strong focus on having these conversations with the next generation, the youth, right?
Right.
And so with them, we know from existing data that women tend to suffer a lack of confidence. So building the confidence, building the abilities, getting rid of limiting thoughts, which are very common, which is things like, I would be good at STEM careers. Right, so that's part of the empowering conversation we hope to drive,
Right, fantastic.
I just want to segue a little bit back to what you said earlier about, we're talking about IRL right now, but
yes,
the digital lifestyle is also pervasive today in society in Singapore.
Yes.
I think you guys work in the online harm space as well. Can you tell us a little bit about the work you do there?
Yeah, so a little backstory on She as well and how much of the board and myself knew each other. Senior Minister of State, Sim Ann, she is also a strong believer in online harms, education, right? Particularly against women and girls. And so these are things that you would experience online, like harassment, cyber stalking, revenge porn. These things tend to happen more to girls than boys. So there was a task force of sorts called the Sunlight Action for Alliance that played out over a year and a half. Had about 50 members from all sorts of industries, education, research, law. So I was one of the people there. And at the end of that Action for Alliance, I think we did some preliminary research with 1,000 Singaporeans, and it was very clear that, number one, 1 in 3 Singaporeans had experienced some form of online harm. It was a clear problem with gender-based online harm, but something like 70% of those who suffered it didn't know what to do when it happened to them, didn't know how to deal with it. They just didn't do anything.
Dealt with it.
Yeah, we just have to live with it. And sometimes the effects can be very serious. But the problem is, again, we have no data on the long and short-term effects. We just assume, you turn off your phone, maybe it goes away. But I think we know that that's really not the case. So at the end of the Action for Alliance, we said, okay, there needs to be some sort of one-stop resource somewhere in Singapore for these people to turn to. So she took on that project as part of the online realm affects equality. So we have managed to, within this year, launch the centre in partnership with SCWO, which is the Singapore Council for Women's Organisations. And what that centre does is it's got a helpline. So it's 12 hours a day. You can call in. There will be a trained counselor who picks up the phone. They're also trained in trauma-informed care because sometimes what happens to you online can be quite serious. So they'll help you initially, and then they'll sort of see, okay, what can we do to best serve you? There's one of a couple of things they can do as follow-up. One is to say, hey, have some follow-up counseling with us. We'll help you, talk you through it. And the other is, well, we've got legal clinics. So we've managed to get 50 lawyers to volunteer. They're all very keen to help. Twice a week, there is a legal clinic, so people can make an appointment, talk to a lawyer, try to understand their rights, and work out a plan for what to do. And one of the interesting features about this center is that she's managed to partner and talk to a lot of the internet platforms. So like TikTok, Google, Meta, LinkedIn, Twitter. Am I missing anyone? I hope not. But they're all equally invested in their users having a safe experience online, right? And pleasant experience. And they also want users to believe that when you do make a report and there is a breach of community guidelines, something will be done. So we've partnered with them, and we're trying to make that reporting process as smooth and quick and effective as it can be. I think one of the problems I learned from these platforms was that when people file a report, sometimes they just do it without a lot of context. So I'll give you an example. I'm being harassed. Then you just take a picture of the word potato, and then you send it to the platform. But that guy has no context. I don't understand why this word in the context of your relationship with your harasser may mean something very, very terrible. So then they can't do anything about it. So that's why we have the lawyers helping them file the online report. So they sort of know what evidence to put in, how to pick the community standard that's relevant. Because they can be a bit confusing to read sometimes.
It's daunting, definitely.
Yeah.
And I mean, even when we communicate as advertisers to these platforms, sometimes it feels like we're talking to a black hole, or whatever we send in that.
It might be a bot, I don't know.
It's usually a bot. We're usually interacting with a bot. So it's good to know that, you guys have some kind of support and partnership with the platform.
And a lot of time, the people who are going through it, they just need that human there to be able to talk them through it as well.
I think the point that you made before about data and data not necessarily existing in a lot of these areas is really quite a crucial thing, isn't it?
It is, and that's why we're hoping to transform the landscape. So what we see in the equality conversation, at least in Singapore, is that people cite reports that have been carried out overseas, so McKinsey in the US or PwC or Deloitte somewhere else.
Yes.
And so that's helpful to guide the conversation, but it doesn't take into account unique cultural factors that may apply to Singapore or Asia. So the data here, I'm sure the government has a lot of data, but it may not be presented in a way that sparks public conversation.
Yes.
Right? So it's very academic or very thick, and then you have to trawl through and pick out the one nugget. That doesn't really help people identify issues very quickly and easily, right? So something like have you heard of the Reykjavik Leadership Index? Yeah, so that was done for the first time in Singapore this year. And it was such a great exercise because that's sort of the first time, the spotlight was shone on how willing are we in our mindsets in Singapore to accept women in leadership positions.
Yes.
Right, so what was interesting to me was this. I think they asked men and women the question, so do you think we've achieved gender equality in Singapore? Like 67 to 70% said, yeah, we're there. We're already there.
Men and women.
Men and women.
Oh, wow.
And then I was looking at some of the other answers and questions. So the question, are we ready for a female head of state? 20-something. Can females be good CEOs? 30-something. So we clearly think we're a lot more equal than we actually are in our mindsets. So this could be due to, I don't know, like Asian stereotypes, maybe a bit more entrenched here. I really don't know. But it's really worth looking into with local specific data.
Yes. And that's presumably what will give you power as well in the end.
That's right. I mean, insofar as you can identify the problem and start talking about it and take control over the conversation that way, that's powerful.
Because that sort of evidence-based insight is really powerful.
I mean, I'm a lawyer, right? I believe in evidence-backed, affidavit-backed advocacy. So it's probably a job hazard that I'm thinking about things this way. But
Yeah, fair enough.
Cool. We talked a little bit about the online harms earlier, and I'm just curious to know, because, my inclination is towards technology. Just curious to know what you think about the kind of role technology can play in women empowerment or female empowerment, if any.
Okay, it's a very difficult question, and I'm definitely not a techie,
problem.
but I will give you my noob
Sure.
views. So the thing that's scaring me a lot recently is AI. I think it's going to develop a lot faster than we can keep up with.
Absolutely.
So before we can have this wonderful, seamless international regulatory system that will take care of things when things go wrong, I think we need to also create some demand in the industry for the intersection of tech and safety. It's like more products should be developed there, so AI can be used for good and bad. I haven't come across a lot of instances where that's happening. It's probably all happening behind closed doors, but I hope that business opportunity for you, I don't know, that it actually picks up some momentum, really.
Unfortunately, there isn't enough investment in the AI safety area, generally speaking, right? And it's definitely lagging behind the kind of pace of development that we've got in the technology itself.
Yeah.
That's worrisome to me, and I think to everyone else who's involved in this technology as well. So maybe from your ears to up there and something.
Well, I
good
mean,
will
in a
happen.
way, it's understandable because you need a commercial driver for
Yes.
it, right? But if the driver is, I will increase my users because women users create demand, right? It could be.
Yeah, but I think regulation is going to be important because no one's going to, want to invest in that area unless they're forced to. At this point, we need to compel companies to do that. And I don't want to say slow down development. I don't think that's the right way either. But definitely we need to regulate. Cool.
And so when we talk in this conversation, Charan tends to come at things very much from a tech perspective.
Sorry.
I'm probably a bit more like you. I'm more of a kind of people person.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of fascinated with the way that different people that you're talking to about the organization and what you believe in, how your message is being taken in, is being adopted, is being ignored, I guess, by some groups.
Well, it hasn't. I've had a very, very positive experience from the start. I can tell you, no one that I've spoken to, whether it's a company or a person or a school or an organization, has said, I disagree with what you're doing. I don't think this is needed. Almost without exception, people say, oh yeah, there's no advocacy group for the mainstream. Oh yes, I face these issues. I've been trying to solve it on my own. Oh yes, education for children. I'm really worried about my kids and online harms. So that's been really encouraging. It gives you the strength and desire to continue. And it's really good for my team as well. I think they find it really, really, really nice. Yeah.
Do you see anything from a generational perspective?
Maybe in terms of tech. All right, so for the online harms part, I think a lot of parents are of the generation where they didn't grow up from the time they were children or babies with tech. So they haven't experienced the kind of online world that their children are now experiencing.
Yes.
They had different influences, right? And a lot of times you can't teach what you don't know. So they try their best, but they never will truly understand. And I think the unique thing about Singaporeans is we trust our government a lot. But that high trust factor means sometimes we don't take personal steps towards ensuring our safety. We rely on the government, right?
Right.
The authorities need to do something. Don't know which authority, all of them, right? But here, I think with online safety, it's going to have to come both ways because the regulatory regime can only move so fast, and technology will always move faster. So I think in our homes and in our families and our daily conversation, we have to be a bit more nimble and up to speed.
Yeah, I thought the points that you were making before about the findings from the Reykjavik study in Singapore were really interesting because there's a gap there, isn't there, between perception and reality by the sound of things.
Yeah, and so that's the interesting thing, that differential, right? And it's really worth looking at a bit more because I think it may come down to innate mindsets and what they call unconscious bias, really. So we don't know we're perpetuating these belief systems, but it's inbuilt.
Yes.
Right? And I actually don't know how far we have come in Singapore. This is my personal surmise, right? Is in Singapore, we have access to cheap home help. Right, we're very, very lucky. And also the Asian family structure, there's always a grandparent or an aunt willing to help with the home burdens and caregiving. So what that means is that women have been very freed up in terms of time and burdens to to go to the workplace, right? Go out into the public workforce realm. And so we see when we look out at the workplace every day, oh, it's full of women. I have a woman boss. What do you mean you still want equality? We're there.
Yeah.
I see an equal amount, right? But then it's actually an artificial prop because you take it away, then you're really tested with the true stereotypes. Who is the one responsible for the home? I think invariably you will find is that it's the lady that has to then pick up those duties again. So I'm not so sure if in our innate mindsets, we are as evolved as we might think we are, based on perception.
Fair enough. I think my wife often refers to the invisible burden of the homemaker.
Yeah.
And but truth be told, and this is not just my perception, but I think we've come to a common understanding that there is and again, you might think I'm mad for saying this, and maybe I am mad, but there is an innate or instinctive, nurturing, kind of side to women that take to this a lot more naturally. I'm not saying that I'm not willing to contribute or play a part in the homemaking, but it's kind of hard given that my wife leaves little room for me to do that. And that's my honest opinion. My wife's going to hate me when she sees this, but...
Yeah. So, I mean, that may well be true, right? Biologically, we're different. Our brains are built differently. As much as I tried to train, my niece and nephew, Arya and Arif, you don't like pink and you don't like blue, okay? It's green and yellow for you both. The minute they go off to school, they come back, they're like, pink's my favorite color. So I don't know to what extent some of it is inherent, but really, I think when you're looking at it, it comes down to the fairness point. So yes, they're different, right? But at what point along the plane are we not having an equal chance?
Yeah.
Right? Do we have to make a false choice? Like I know, I mentioned earlier that we did that study with all these lawyers. When we talked to all the main lawyers, they were like, but the ladies leave willingly. They make the decision.
Yeah.
Nobody was twisting their arm. But you see, they weren't faced with the same burdens. The same considerations didn't lead to the same outcome.
Yes.
So then that's where you need to readjust, maybe to give someone a leg up and someone not. So that's true equity in play.
Yeah, I think that's always a challenge, right? Equality versus equity. There's a sensitive balance there you've got to make.
Yeah, definitely. The other area that I think we were going to ask you to chat about a bit was the organisation had a fantastic opportunity to go to the United Nations General Assembly.
Yes.
Which sounds like an amazing experience.
It really was. I think I took a few fangirl photos when I was in there, in the room, because it was very impressive. So I think for the first time in a long time this year, Singapore sent a political office holder-led contingent to the UN, I think to build relationships, talk about women's issues, and really just learn. So you can, within the General Assembly and official events, talk to official representatives, ministries. But outside the GA and the UN themselves, there were about 800 satellite events with NGOs from all over the world. You can just pick and choose what you want to learn about. There's every topic under the sun pertaining to gender equality. So it was great. We were just on our feet from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day, just attending and walking around. And I think one of the interesting insights I had, which again was selfishly self-validating, was when we were sitting in the General Assembly. And so how it works is every country from A to Z gets 5 minutes and 5 minutes only to talk about the key issues affecting gender equality in their country. So they have to be concise and they have to pick the most important ones. And almost every single country said technology is causing fractures in gender equality. We're at a crossroads. We need to do something about it. And for two different reasons. So it depends, I think, on the profile of the country. So maybe the more first world countries would say safety or the experiences online are causing differences, right? Some women don't want to access services anymore because they feel unsafe there. Like famously gaming. It's very abusive to women. You could have had a champion gamer, but she just doesn't want to go. She's no longer interested in being called names every time she's on the platform, right? So that's for more developed countries. But for the less developed ones, I think they were talking about accessibility to technology as being the hurdle. So if you're living in countries where the infrastructure isn't there or where poverty is an issue and you can't get onto the internet, you can't even apply for jobs anymore. You can't do your banking transactions. It's very disempowering to be able to not access these what we now, in Singapore consider very easy and basic services. Like I don't carry cash anymore. Do you?
No,
Yeah.
I don't. I never do.
It's a recurring topic, actually. It's quite
Is it?
interesting.
That's how you get away with not paying for stuff, is it?
No. Unfortunately, we have PayLah, so
Okay.
you can't run away from that.
Technology to the rescue.
Yes. Oh, yes, always.
So that experience was an amazing experience.
Oh, it was very eye-opening. It made us realize that what we're doing is we're really in the right place at the right time. And I think we actually shared the model of the one-stop center that we're doing with a lot of countries. And I was quite amazed by how many said, can you let us follow this? Can we use this as a model? Because I think really it's a common problem everywhere in the world. So that's encouraging.
That's great. Was to kind of set a benchmark there and a standard.
I know. Maybe that's why they sent us to the UN.
Singapore number one.
Singapore number one, right? Yeah. We're so used to being number one. But I can tell you a place where we're number 2 from bottom.
Yes.
And that is equality adoption in the workplace.
Equality
Wow.
adoption,
Yeah,
meaning
adoption.
policies in the workplace.
Yeah, in the workplace.
Well, Richard's a big push. He's done a big push on that front, and he's actually had a number of senior women come into the office to talk to all of the women in the company about their careers and the kind of support they could get,
Oh, yeah.
which has been really great for the women in our company as well.
Thank you, Richard.
Well, yeah, I think it's in our industry, the sort of marketing and advertising industry. What is interesting is that what we would describe as the client side of the industry tends to very typically be female-led, actually.
Okay.
But the agency and the service side of the industry has tended to be very
Male.
heavy. And so I think for all of our team, both male and female, really, it's good for them to be hearing from different types of leaders about their journeys and the approaches that they've had to take.
As a role model, as a guide, as a mentor, whichever context they find helpful.
Yeah. It's been really good for our team, I
Yeah.
think, really useful. Yeah.
They've loved it. Anyway, Simran, thank you so much for your time. But I'd love to, just ask you for one parting thought before we leave that you think, people listening to this podcast would appreciate and would remember.
Okay, no pressure.
No
What's
pressure,
the most
take your
important
time.
thing? I actually think we should try to, each of us, right, take a little bit of control and check our own mindsets. Think about what biases do we hold, and then if we can try to at least be aware of them, we may not be able to cure them. We might be a part of the force, everyone moving in the right direction at the right time. I have them.
I know I do. I just said them.
I'll share them after the mic turns off.
Just to finish, I really liked the discussion around empowerment. And I kind of think there's an idea in the thought of gender empowerment.
Yeah.
Because I think for women, clearly it's critically important. But for men, I think men are struggling with a lot of issues around
agree
this
with you.
area.
Fully. I think they'll take another hour, separate podcast.
Yeah.
But no one's having those conversations.
Yeah.
Except Jordan Peterson.
And that conversation is probably not the best one.
Yeah, not the conversation we
You
want.
can
Fair
quote
enough.
me on that.
Fair enough. And I think I have a young daughter, so she's just coming into social media herself. So this whole online harms thing is a hot topic at my home as well. So I'll keep what
Yeah.
you said in mind, definitely.
You can send her to me, lah.
I will
Training.
for some training.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Simran. And all of you guys, hope you enjoyed the show. That's all we have for you today. But remember to like and subscribe. Ciao.